Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's episode of the Sports Source. It's August. That means football is here. Football's right around the corner. Fall camp started for Tennessee. We're going to talk plenty of that today. Back half of the show, we'll also talk about just college football coming apart at the seams, or coming together at the seams, I guess. It depends on how you look at it. You got some coming together and some of it's falling apart with realignment. What is the impact on Tennessee and the SEC specifically? Is ESPN a bad thing for the league? That's an interesting topic we'll discuss. And then we have a poll question for you today that we've talked about it a few times, but I've never been able to just turn it over to you and let you have your say. And today we'll ask you, who's your most disliked former UT football coach? Pruitt, Jones, Dooley, or Kiffin? And then we'll talk the last segment about your answer. So let's get right into it. Our first segment today is brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. If you've got old furniture in your house that needs to go, call Junk Be Gone. If you got something big in the backyard, an old swing set, an ancient barn that's turned into a lean-to, an old boat with a hole in it, call Junk Be Gone to tear it down, haul it away. They can do all of that. Do what I do, folks. Trust Junk Be Gone. JunkBeGone.biz, local business, locally owned, right down to the logo design. They've done everything locally. Great group, great people running it. JunkBeGone.biz to learn more. All right, let's introduce the panelists. The little graphic when they speak will tell you where they work. We're going to get right into it with Jimmy Himes, Josh Ward, Ryan Callahan, Vince Ferrara. Thanks to all of you guys for being here. And as I said, usually our poll has to do with our #1 topic. Not today. We're going to set it for our last topic. We're going to let you vote all day. So let's go ahead and put the poll in here. All you have to do is click the little QR code, or you can go to our website, sportsource.tv/polls, and give us your take. We intentionally didn't put it on Twitter, which means there's fewer votes at this point, which means those little lines should move more once you start clicking and voting. I'll be interested to see. You can vote for the whole show. We'll talk about it at the end. I'll be interested to see which of these guys you vote as the most disliked. Vince going to the phones. All right. All right. Let's.
That Pruitt photo, by the way.
Yeah, I like the Pruitt photo and the Dooley photo. I had to find some good ones.
Yeah.
But the Pruitt one, just brilliant. All right. Let's get started. With Tennessee football, the Vols opened fall camp this week. Josh Heupel talked about how different things were in year 3 compared to where they were when he inherited the program in year 1. Let's go ahead and put up his quote from this week, and that is, "You just look through the depth of our roster, the length, size, ability to bend up front in particular, the athleticism, the ability to move out in space with our skill guys and big skill. It's dramatically different." And by the way, sign up for the newsletter from Josh and Swain, their weekly newsletter. You can get stories like that sent right to your inbox. I love it because I'll just grab a quote straight from it and put it right there. But I would encourage you to sign up for his newsletter.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Here's the deal, though. That all sounds good. Sounds terrific. The roster is deeper, faster, stronger, more athletic, more bendability up front, the whole 9 yards. But, Jimmy, you won 11 games last year. You have a vastly improved roster from where it was 2 years ago. How much can you expect that to impact the win-loss record?
I don't know that it can impact the win-loss record. It's going to be hard to exceed 11 wins, right? And you still got Alabama and Georgia that you got to face, and plus there's some other teams that are dangerous opponents along the way. I think where the depth is going to help them is going to be on defense. Offensively, they don't play a lot of receivers anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think on defense, I think Rodney Garner played 10 or 11 defensive linemen last year. And I think those guys, I think he'll continue to do that. I think there's more depth at linebacker. I think there's more depth in the secondary. So I think overall the defense will be better. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win 11 games, though. But I do think the depth where it's going to show up the most is going to be an improved defense.
Well, and to Jimmy's point, I think it's important to point out when I see more talent on this team, and more depth especially, but more talent, a lot of it's in the younger players on this team. It's the depth that we're going to see. So it's talented youth that's still learning what they need to do, and how much can those guys make an impact on this year's team is going to be the big question. So I think long term, there's a lot more talent and NFL kind of upside on this team, but how much of it impacts this team? And the key to this season is going to be more how talented are those seniors that are now moving into the starting lineup, or the transfers they replaced those key players from last year with. That's where we don't know how they compare maybe to a Jalen Hyatt or a Hendon Hooker. Are those upgrades, or are those kind of trying to replace and maybe come out even with what you had last year?
Right.
And I think it can impact the record without necessarily having a better record than last year, right? Because of the star power that they lost from a year ago at quarterback and wide receiver and a number of other places. So it can possibly offset that a little bit. I mean, even last year they had the loss to Cedric Tillman, and you saw Ramel Keaton step up, and there's many more examples of that. I still think there's a couple of positions where they can't afford to lose certain guys, but I think there are more positions like that they can and offset some of the star power loss from last year.
Yeah, the quote does read, if you don't know anything about the last couple of years at Tennessee, it reads like, okay, this is a program that's been building and now it has a chance to break out record-wise, but they're coming off an 11-win season with huge wins against great teams, including a team like Alabama that has as much talent as anybody. I think what he's probably thinking about short-term is, okay, we have more depth at linebacker. If we deal with injuries like 2 years ago, which is the comparison there, they were at like 3 linebackers. I don't think they trusted all 3.
Right.
So now I think they like 5 or 6 guys, even though some might be young and you don't know how much you can count on them game one. Special teams, where they might have to use some walk-ons. Now they have 4 or 5-star level athletes that'll be out there. But record-wise, I mean, there's a legitimate chance they take a step back while they continue to build the program for what those young guys will be in the next few years.
And I think you hit on something that reads like a short-term comment, but the reality is I think it has more to do with the long-term positioning of the program. It's you're not going, well, as long as you keep recruiting like you're recruiting, you're not going to go back to that place you were when you were razor thin in his first year. Moving forward is where this is going to help. And that gets to what you're speaking to, too, that some of these guys are young. But you read that and you think, oh, man, this year. But the reality is it's more about the program. The foundation is getting stronger and better.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll give you the one exception. I think cornerback is the position where I would look at and say the improvement, the additional depth on this team might make a difference this year. They have 5 seniors competing for playing time at cornerback, and then you throw in a few talented freshmen. So that's a much better situation on this year's team. That gives you a chance to maybe swap out guys if it's not going well and just improve there where they obviously need to improve.
And keep in mind, it looks even more promising for him because of the type of system he runs compared to the way it was before. I mean, having to transform the roster to the kind of players that not only works for his system, but in today's college football. So I think it fits what he's looking for. And when you see the eye test, and you guys have been out there, know, the eye test shows that out. For those of us that saw what it was before, and now it is a distinct difference.
Anything else to add?
I would say maybe it also does help with the record because, like we mentioned, 11 games. So regular season, it's 10-2. So think about late last season, Jeremy Banks is unavailable. He's a really important player for them at linebacker. For whatever reason, he's not available. But they might feel better late in the season if they need an extra body at linebacker or corner or on the defensive line, just the development under Ronnie Garner. So maybe late in the season in November, we're looking at one of these young players we're talking about helping them win a game that wouldn't have been there a year ago.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the depth can help you sustain the record. It may not make you better, but if you can sustain 11 wins, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and I think also the positive here is we've already seen through 2 years, it's clear that this staff knows how to develop players. All right, so if you give them better clay to work with from the beginning, that's a positive. You would think they'd be able to get even more out of that. All right, let me tell you what's coming up the rest of the show today. There we go. We're going to talk about who are the hot shots at fall camp. That's the next couple of segments. National media weighing in on Tennessee and their projections for this season. That should be interesting. Realignment nonsense. We'll talk about that and the impact on the SEC and Tennessee. Plus, the perfect, look at that, it's in red. It's perfect. You can't argue it. The perfect fix for sports. I have the Cavaliers line there. That's not actually in there. I didn't change the graphic. But it is a good tease because we're only about 3 weeks away from the Cavaliers line coming back on the Sports Source. All right, let me tell you what we got coming up. When we come back, we're going to talk about the offensive side of the ball. Who popped this week? Which newcomers stood out? Which veterans look improved? Were there any issues that sent up a red flag? We'll talk offense, fall camp, next. Coming back on the Sports Source.